Okay, so because I'm a sucker for punishment, a friend of mine bought me, or built me rather, a property model earlier this year. And then what I'm trying to do now is to add the bond and transfer costs to be dynamic. So instead of me putting in, let's say, 500,000 and then going on an external calculator to figure out what the bond and transfer costs for that type of investment property would be, it can just be dynamic. And because I'm a sucker for things, I googled the calculations and I couldn't find anything. So now I've gone and I've done this cool thing where I've ingested a PDF essentially from LexisNexis conveyances, and this is what the PDF looks like. So I've just ingested it in Excel. It's not painful. All you do is you say data, get data, from file, and then you say from PDF, and then you point it to the PDF. So there's it. It was the transfer cost PDF. And then what you do is you sort of tell it how you want to see it. So I just say it in a table format, and then it just dumps the various pages here. I mean, the fun part is going to be the cleaning of the data. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going to need. For instance, there's a table which gives you, bond costs and interest rate, and it gives you per band the interest rate and the time in years that the repayments. So I'm not interested in that really. I'm not interested in the summary either. I'm interested in the actual cost, and I couldn't actually find a breakdown. So the breakdown is actually in the hundreds of thousands, and that I wasn't aware of that. So it can actually make a big difference. Let's say you're looking at a property, that's 490, or you're making an offer of 490. There's a big difference between the 490 and the 500 when it comes to the actual fees. So there's a ladder in terms of that. So price value 490, 500. No, it's actually the same. Even the VAT is the same. Okay, so where I want to see whether there's a step up. Okay, so 450 to 455, for instance. So there'd be a bit of a step up in terms of the fees over there. So it's a nice problem. I don't understand why there isn't like a standalone site that tells you the rules. But I'm seeing a lot of calculators, and they're quite different, right? So the Uber home loan calculator is different to the Property 24 one. It's off by a bit. But it shouldn't matter if you're using hundreds of thousands, I guess. But so percentage wise, it should still be fine. But I want to try and get it as accurate as possible. And then what I also realized, and what was I going to say now? Oh, they have the bond cost and the transfer costs. And what I was going to say is the one thing I did find was I'll show you now, the transfer costs. Right, so I found a nice table of that because SARS, is serious about taking their share of everything and anything. So SARS shows you nicely for the transfer duty, which is what you pay for anything over $1 million. If you buy a property over $1 million, so that's the one thing that's going to be really easy. So yeah, this is a nice little tool that I recently got into, and I want to see if it actually works. On a nice hard case here, and then I'll see if it's applicable in my daily job. Cool, thanks. Right, so I'm getting into it. The data is quite dirty, so you see this table corresponds to, what is it, page 2 it says, page 2, table 4. So it corresponds to the bond repayments, like I said. No, page 2, I'm on the wrong page. This is page 3. So it corresponds to, it says page 2. So this one, yeah. So it skips all the words, which is quite smart. So this would be page 1, and this would be page 2. So it looks for the HTML with tables. So less than 100, etc., which is fine. So that one came out nicely. But then if you go to table 3, it didn't come in nicely because the headers are all jumbled up. But in any event, I don't need this one because it's the interest rates that I was talking about. So it does the bond repayment calculation. So I'm going to hide this one. I don't want to delete it. I don't like getting rid of the master data. I always like keeping it. This is actually the table that I am more interested in, right? And it's about 10,000 in between, so that is actually perfect for my calculations. It's granular enough without it being, too much of a headache. But what you'll see here, let me just make this a bit smaller. What you'll see here, and this is page 5-8, it tells me. Let's see. So this is it. Yeah. So it's pages 5-8, and you'll see that what it's missing is the column names. So I didn't get any of those in. I just have less than 100, and then 100, 105, 110. So I don't have any of the column names. So I'll have to put them in myself, all 12 columns rather. But that's not even the dirty part, right? That's easily, that's an easy fix. Let me just freeze here. This is the part that's a bit frustrating. So what essentially happened is this bottom is the heading for the next. You understand? So it kind of messed that up when it was reading. So it's not perfect. Like I said, it's a tool that I recently got into. Shout out to Nomonde for telling me about it. I actually tried it for something at work, but it wasn't, I think it was overkill for what I was doing. But it did help. I just didn't automate the full process. I just used it to extract, the numbers for the first example, and then going forward, we're still working on another long-term solution to that. But yeah, so what it's doing is it's taking this and it's appending it to the next table. So you see how this one is the start of this page. What it's doing is it's taking this and it's appending to this table, which is a bit of a mess. But the cool thing about data is that you get to extract a lot of knowledge from it, but like 80% of the work is in the data wrangling. So when I put data wrangling on my skill set on LinkedIn, I want you guys to know that I actually can do it, especially if I get to finish this project and then I show you what the end result looks like. Okay, so before I call it a night, just for today's work, I'm going to take you through what I've done so far. So this is for the fees. I came across a neat little boundary problem here. So for less than 100,000, there's really nothing exciting. Let's say you buy a house for 96,000, it's a flat fee of 5,710. If you buy for 120,000, also nothing exciting. Things start to pick up when you get to the 500,000 mark. So at 495, it's still pretty flat, nothing to write home about. And then once you get to 500,000, what happens is, and let me put in 500,000 as the bond amount here. Once you get to 500,000, it's still flat, but once you get to 500,000 and 10 Rand, right, things get a bit interesting. So the rule of thumb is, or rather the price guidance is 12,990 for the first 500,000 plus further increases at 1,760 per 100,000 or part thereof, which you might think is a bit easy, but it was hard to wrap my head around. I tried round. What else did I try? I tried mod, but what I was actually looking for is quotient, right? So what I needed to do is I needed to take the difference, think of it as the distance of the bond amount from 500,000, which in this instance is 10 Rand, and then quotient of the difference, which is obviously 0 in this instance. And then what I needed to do is say quotient of the difference plus 1. And then what I do is I say the quotient of the difference plus the increment. So the increment we said was 1,760 as per the rules, and that's 1,760, and then here you should be seeing 14,750. So let me make it a bit more interesting. Let me take it to 600,000. I think that's going to be a bit clearer. So 600,000 is exactly 100,000 away from 500,000, which is what you see here, which is the difference from 500,000. And then the quotient of the difference is obviously, 100,000 by definition of what the quotient is. And then what I do here is I say quotient diff plus 1, and I get 2, and then I say 2 multiplied by the 12,990. It's quite neat if you think about it. It's quite neat, and I'm sure there's a cheaper way, mentally, right, for me to have done this. But for me, this is how I came to this is what came to me at the time, and it works. So I'm not gonna go up to 2 million, I think, for my purposes, because like I said, it's for my rental income model, and I don't see myself buying a house for more than 2 million. So for the purposes of this workbook, which I'm trying to update, the 2 million will be the cap. And then from 1 million up to 2 million, what I did is so the price guidance says it's 21,790 for the first million plus further increases at 1,760. But now it gets interesting, per 200,000 Rand thereof, right? And you might be thinking, well, isn't that just double of that per 100,000? No, it's not. I tried that. So what I had to do here is, similar to what I did at the beginning, but let me just show you the boundaries. Boundaries are always interesting. So the million falls under the million. So here I should, ideally have an equals to sign, but in my calculation I do actually have, so that it's fine there. So what I have here is it starts from a million plus, right? So my category should actually read a million plus. So I'm going to make it easy on the eye, and I want to say million one, right? So that's actually 110,000, but a million one. So if I have a house for a million one, what's the calculation for my transfer fees? So what you do is similar to here. I take the difference between the bond amount and a million. So here I just said 2 times half a million because I was just getting it from there. And then I take the quotient of the difference, and then I say the quotient of the difference, plus 1. And then I say quotient difference multiplied by increment. The increment is the 176E. And then of course here what I do is I take, the bond amount, and then I add the quotient of the difference, right? Which is the 27. Oh, I add the 2170. Quotient difference plus increment. Yeah. Quotient difference. So that is 2 times 100,000 because it's 200,000. So when I'm doing the quotient diff and the quotient diff plus 1, I'm trying to get the distance so that I can understand how many 200,000 multiples go into it, or how many 100,000 multiples go into it in the case of the half a million. And then when I multiply by the increment, I'm getting the or part thereof multiplied by the the increment of 176 in both instances. I mean, it's not the cleanest. I'm not particularly proud of it, but like I said, for the purposes of this, I don't want to over-engineer it. It works, I'm happy, and then I just put like a neat if. I should actually have put an if error, but I'm not that fussy about it because I built it, so I'll know if it breaks. But I basically don't want it calculating unless it absolutely has to. So for instance, for 50K, I don't want anything else calculating. Sorry, that's 500,000. But for 50K, I only want an answer there. But this is still live, which it shouldn't be, but that's fine. I don't really mind it. So that's the transfer fees, and then I can just check it against the sheet I had. Okay, that's wrong. I was looking up how to round numbers, if you can believe that. Let me see if I can pull that up, the actual table. So I have. Okay, I can't quite find it, but that's where I'm at.